Peter Thiel has spent 30 years telling the world that most people are sheep trapped in mimetic desire, blindly imitating one another into mediocrity and catastrophe. He has built a multi-billion-dollar fortune, funded surveillance infrastructure, helped elect a president, and positioned himself as one of the few minds clear-eyed enough to see through the illusion. The diagnosis is René Girard's. The confidence is entirely Thiel's own. And the intellectual foundation underneath both of them is considerably thinner than either would prefer you notice. Peter Thiel co-founded PayPal, made the first outside investment in Facebook, built Palantir Technologies into a defense and intelligence contractor of considerable reach, and bankrolled a movement of young men who believe that seasteading and longevity research will solve what democracy cannot. He is, by any measure, an unusually consequential figure. He is also a thinker in the precise sense that his public influence depends not just on what he has built, but on the cosmological story he tells about why he built it. A story borrowed almost entirely from a mid-century French literary critic who believed he had discovered the hidden mechanism of all human desire. What Thiel actually does intellectually is take Girard's mimetic theory, the claim that human desire is fundamentally imitative, that we want things because rivals want them, that this generates rivalry, violence, and the need for a scapegoat, and use it as a universal solvent. Markets, competition, democratic consensus, institutional trust, all of it dissolves into mimetic contamination. The contrarian who escapes the herd, who finds the secret no one else is looking for, who goes from 0 to 1 rather than copying what already exists, this is the Girardian saint repackaged as a venture capitalist. It is an elegant story. It explains Thiel's own career as evidence of a metaphysical truth rather than a series of contingent bets. That is not an accident. The problem begins at the foundation. Mimetic desire is, at best, a plausible partial account of a real psychological phenomenon, the tendency to calibrate wants by reference to what others want. This is documented, interesting, and limited. It is a mechanism operating at the level of individual psychology, where it competes with equally documented mechanisms: empathy, reasoned preference, institutional loyalty, prosocial norm following, and what the vast anthropological literature describes as the deep human capacity for cooperation under conditions where defection would pay. Girard does not refute these competing forces. He does not weight them, bound them, or specify under what conditions mimetic rivalry dominates. He ignores them entirely, which is not a theoretical achievement, it is a selection bias dressed as a discovery. The damage compounds catastrophically when the theory is asked to explain institutions, markets, and civilizational dynamics. This is where the micro-reduction collapses in plain sight. A legal system is not a dyadic rivalry written large. A market price is not the output of two men envying each other's desire. A norm of reciprocity that persists across generations, survives personnel turnover, and produces social equilibria that no individual intended. This is an emergent structure operating according to processes that imitation between individuals does not generate and cannot explain. Girard and Thiel skip this transition entirely because neither has a theory of it. What they have instead is the scapegoat mechanism, which is vivid, which is drawn from literary readings of Sophocles and the Gospels, and which tells you nothing about the structural conditions under which it occurs, the countervailing institutions that contain it, or why some societies are dramatically more stable than others. The examples are illustrative rather than demonstrative. Shakespeare and Dostoevsky are not data points, they are curated narratives selected because they dramatize the thesis beautifully. The prosocial behavior that fills the anthropological record is not an anomaly the theory must account for, it is simply absent, which is an entirely different thing. And the phenomenological move underneath all of it is methodological subjectivism presented as social science, attributing mimetic desire as the observed interior motor of human behavior, with no measurement, no control condition, no engagement with attachment theory or cultural evolution or rational choice models that handle the same phenomena with greater precision and considerably less drama. What Thiel inherits is not just the insight but the inflation, and adds to it the ideological convenience. Girard's framework licenses the conclusion that democratic consensus is mimetic contamination, that competitive markets reward sheep, and that the rare visionary who ignores the herd is operating at a different ontological level from ordinary human beings. The theory does not support these conclusions. It merely makes them feel like discoveries. To be accurate, the kernel is real. Imitative desire exists. Rivalry cascades exist. The observation that consensus can suppress genuine heterodox thinking and that people systematically underweight non-consensus positions is not wrong. Thiel's investment record suggests he has applied this insight with genuine skill. The problem is not that the kernel is false. The problem is that a kernel is not a cosmology, and he has been selling it as one for 30 years. Thiel performs the register of rigorous esoteric analysis, secrets, apocalypse, 0 to 1, while operating in the register of literary prophecy. The vocabulary simulates depth. The argument forecloses the question it should be answering, compared to what evidence. Girard gave him a striking metaphor for individual rivalry and called it a universal social ontology. Thiel took that and called it a philosophy of history, a theory of markets, and an implicit justification for his own position outside the mimetic herd. What is actually there is a single-level reduction masquerading as civilizational theory, built on literary examples that cannot be systematically examined, and made more rather than less influential by the fact that it is delivered with exceptional confidence.